2 days in a row. It's too good to be true, Anthony. How are you?
There's an airplane behind you and you just bought it and you want me to be your pilot. Now I have to take pilot courses.
Yep.
I'm up for the job. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Everybody, welcome to the one, the only No Vacancy Live. I'm Glenn Hausman. That is Anthony Melcuri. Anthony, I'm excited. We're going to be focusing on air travel a little bit today. Not the kind I'm suffering with all the time, but the good kind.
Do I have to be your pilot or your flight attendant?
I thought you and I could be co-pilots. What do you think about that?
Co-pilots. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
actually, I just want to say that our plan today was to bring on this the CEO of Sentient Jets here, just to hit him up for a job, because we already know how to fly a plane. Of course, we can't fly anything newer than 1955, but I think we can figure out that new technology. What do you think?
I think we can. You know, the only problem is you may have to pilot because I'm colorblind. So if they say hit the green button, I may hit the red button, and I may eject you out of the plane. Matter of fact, the true story is I went in the Air Force to get my college degree, and I wanted to go to pilot. I wanted to become a pilot, and they literally. This is how quick my whole life changed. I was at the MEP station, which is where you kind of take your test, and at Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn, underneath the Verrazano Bridge, and he was about 20 feet away from me, and he goes, "What color is this dot?" I said, "Green." He goes, "What color is this dot?" He goes, "Red." He goes, "You're colorblind." Next, that was the end of my pilot dreams.
That's too bad. Fortunately, you had other pilot dreams, and then you went ahead and did a show and got on TV. So that's pretty good. Pilot success.
I did that, and I started like as you know, I had the most dangerous job as a protocol officer in Ford Coffee.
No, I know. That is right. Now, before we get into our show, I just want to say a big thank you to the folks over at International Cree for this incredible award that our team won. You can't really see it with the green screen and stuff behind me. It was given to our, oops, sorry, Anthony, I didn't mean to do that. It was given to our entire team for the work that we've done helping the educational community out there, for all that we've done here at the No Vacancy Podcast, educating, empowering, and hopefully entertaining. How cool is that?
It was fun. It was wonderful. And I asked you to speak on our behalf. I didn't want to speak. So, of course, as soon as you were done, you're like, and now Anthony and Suzanne.
I kicked it off to Suzanne, and then she gave it to you. You were just supposed to be like, thank you. We discussed this.
I know. But then as soon as I got to the mic, I had to talk. But you were wonderful. Suzanne was wonderful, and the crowd was wonderful, and it was.
And you were exceptional.
Well, thank you. You were exceptional.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into the actual content of our show instead of this needless bloviating. We got with us Mr. Andrew Collins. I timed that perfectly. CEO of Sentient Jet. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
I got so many questions for you. Being that you're at Sentient Jet, what is it like working with airplanes that have a sense of self? Did you hire them right off the car spin-off planes? How does all of this work? I'm curious about that.
So, in all respect to our brand name, we are a more thoughtful way to fly when it comes to private aviation. And that is really where we kind of drive towards with our client base. But we invented something called the private jet card almost 25 years ago and revolutionized the industry where people access only time versus an asset or purchasing a jet. So we've grown this globally to be the biggest jet card company in the world. We have a lot of people that have, fallen in line and kind of joined the fray to provide this service. But we put hundreds of thousands of folks every year up in private jets on demand within, a 48-hour notification in both the contiguous United States and across the globe.
So for lack of a better term, are you like the reservation system for the planes? Do you own the planes, or you kind of find the plane and connect the guest?
That's a great question, Anthony. We certify a select set of planes across the globe. So there's probably 7,000 aircraft out there available at any given moment in a for-pay environment. We've certified who's flying it, the crews. We go through multiple safety checks and have spent millions of dollars to do this. So it's not unlike an Uber type of situation.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, where you're essentially taking excess capacity in the space, and you're really applying it to this card product, and not only maximizing a business model for the aircraft owner, but you're offering the consumer an easier entry point as opposed to purchasing a fraction or something of that nature. But to your point, we are very much like an agent or a reservation system. It's a good analogy.
So is it on demand too? Like if I'm not a card carrying member, can I call you up or text you and get a flight to New York if I'm in a jam or I need a jet? Or
you need a card because that's the model and the benefits that come with a card. We guarantee the aircraft, we guarantee the pricing, we have 24/7 client service across the globe. We have a history of you. We have all these things that come in these accoutrements, including right down to the insurance levels and everything else. So you're buying into a program as opposed to just one flight. And so you've got to make that commitment to join.
Am I allowed to ask what is a basic plan to join?
So you can start flying a light jet somewhere around $6,500 an hour.
Oh, cool.
One way.
Wow.
$6,500 an hour one way. Wait, is there a club membership first?
No, there's no fee for it. All your dollars go right to your flying. So all your pre-buying is 25 hours.
Right. And one of the things that I find interesting is one of the growing hospitality companies out there about 10, 15 years ago flew by private jet. And first I was like, that's kind of crazy, but they weren't in a location as easily accessible as Anthony and I are to JFK, for example. So for them to try to get somewhere in order to just start to go somewhere ate up so much of their time. Correct. that company's CEO couldn't really be productive. So they switched to this model of working with private jet companies. And even though it sounded like it was a cost up front, it was actually saved them a lot of money. And they were ultimately able to grow a lot quicker by leveraging this tool. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I couldn't agree more. It is one of the main points of private aviation. And a lot of people think of the industry as, celebrity driven and very sexy and so on and so forth. But the reality is that, we have 6,000 card owners and a good chunk of them are solving that type of need. We all run off of the same watch. Private aviation allows you to manipulate it. So that into itself is what a lot of the folks, become card holders for. And, you have 5,000 private aviation airstrips in the United States versus the 500 commercial. So that accessibility, that ability to hit multiple locations in a given day and so on and so forth really generates that productivity and really, gets you where you need to go.
And how much of your business, excuse me, I have the hiccups. How much of your business is last minute?
We have two things. So you're guaranteed all the rules and regs, the terms and conditions that come with the product at 48 hours. That's 2 days out. But we will always take a pop-up flight. So if you call in, we can handle a pop-up flight. We can handle last minute stuff. So, we have the ability to turn a jet in 2 hours if we need to.
Yeah.
I mean, it just depends on
availability, location.
Exactly. And we're always going to want to make sure that the availability is self-imposed because we've certified only a small pool against the larger pool because we believe those are the best aircraft, the best operators, and have the best history, and we've plugged into their back office, et cetera, et cetera.
And do you have other services like getting a car or getting first class treatment going through the terminals? Like what other services do you provide?
Yeah, so we have complimentary and or pass through costs relative to ground transportation or anything like that. And, I believe from a brand perspective and from a hospitality perspective that, the moment someone leaves the door of their house or their office, we own that trip, right? Regardless of whether they're not there, they're in the air. So from the curb to the tail and back, that's essentially our ownership of that journey.
This is really super fascinating to me. And one area I could see a lot of good use. I just finished reading this great book called Whale Hunt in the Desert. It's all about reinventing how Las Vegas hosts got gamblers to come to Vegas in like the 90s when it started to change. They talked about the edge with the private jets. So I bet you there's a lot of casinos around the country that could utilize one of these cars to get that high roller to come in, for an example. So there's a big leisure component besides the business component here as well.
There's a significant leisure component, and it blurred in the pandemic, to be truthful.
Right.
So,
And that's kind of why we wanted to have you come on the show today, because it kind of really changed everything. Please continue, Andrew.
It did. And so we can talk about it in a variety of ways, but I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never seen anything like what happened in the pandemic. And I know in the hospitality space, there'll be many people that say that, right?
Of course.
The surge that happened kind of halfway through the pandemic when everybody thought it was coming to an end, created kind of this frenzy and this FOMO where everybody said, I'm not going to waste another minute. I got to get out there. I've been cooped up.
With a much reduced commercial airline schedule
100%
backdrop to this.
Exactly. So when COVID hit, everybody went to a playbook thinking that we were going to go into, a really economic downturn and a lot of things. The consumer was really going to be impacted. So they shrink wrapped a lot of the routes on the regionals and a lot of the commercials. And as you know, those can't fire back up quick. Right.
And they still haven't. We're still below 2019 levels in overall commercial flights.
And you had a lot of people leave the industry. They just said, you know what, I think this is probably my time. And so you have all these factors that impact, what we look at TSA crossings every day and just look at, where we are. Right. So at the end of the day, a lot of people turn to commercial. And by the way, I was a big evangelist for this, but almost in a naive way, because I came out with the things that I felt were important that said, look, you have such little exposure if you fly privately. And someone had done a study that said you have hundreds and thousands of touch points if you fly commercial in terms of your exposure, when we knew very little about what was driving the pandemic. And so we would say to people, look, we figured it out that you probably only have about 46 touch points if you fly privately. And so that, with people saying, look, I have a partner that's immunocompromised, or I don't want to go commercial, or I don't want to waste another minute of my life, or whatever it is, right? Or the routes just dried up and I can't get to my, relatives or my second home or my office or whatever it is. So we had a surge like we never saw before of people come in, and it was probably the biggest surge of private flyers I've ever seen. We had to figure out how to handle that and deal with that. And that was an extensive piece, but I'll kind of stop there for a second. But that was the beginnings of a big drive and a big push for about 2 years of kind of manic flying. And now we're back to more of a scheduled, controlled environment.
Yeah, it's opened up, I think, in my opinion, a whole lot of opportunity to companies like yours and others in this arena, because what we want out of life has started to significantly change as well. And our understanding of time versus dollars versus experiences is a lot different than it was in 2019. So that's why I think you're starting to see a lot more opportunity out there on a go forward basis. And I do believe when it comes to that business community, particularly with this recession that's always 6 months away and never seeming to happen, is going to keep kind of pushing you guys forward in this particular capacity. So you mentioned a lot of elements here, but one of the things that you're focused on is that carbon footprint thing, because everybody loves to drag on people taking private jets for just that reason. How real is this, and what does it actually mean? So you could, tell the naysayers that there is something behind what you're talking about here with actually being environmental conscious as a private jet organization.
Yeah. So, when I said up front that we're the more thoughtful way to fly, I think it's our approach to product and our approach to structured product and thinking about the consumer. One of the things that I felt prior to the pandemic that would always be, the level of resistance to private aviation might be fiscal conservancy, or it might be, an environmental concern or sustainability, right? And as that has become more and more of a headline topic, so too does the consumer think, what are you thinking about for this? And we'd been thinking about it for many years. And so we did something very different, and to the point where we've really tried to challenge the industry, right? Which is, most people will, whether it be commercial or it be private, will just think about, buying a carbon offset that offsets their flight, right? So 100% of their flight is I bought an offset, from a registered, proprietor, and I feel better about that. At least I'm doing something. It felt like that wasn't enough. So what we did is we actually went and worked with a company to figure out, beyond that sort of footprint, what could we do? So we offset 300% of every flight that a consumer takes or a client owner takes with us. And it's at no cost to them. It's actually coming out of, our operating expenses. And the reason we do it is because when you get by the 100%, what we learned is there's carbon monoxide, there's aerosols, there's things in there, there's water vapors that still happen that aren't actually offset or taken care of. So we do the 300% offset. And as well, our parent company has made a big commitment to getting involved in sustainable aviation fuel.
Right.
So that's one that is now working its way through commercial airlines. And it's at that point in the journey from a business perspective where it's still very expensive and very, very limited in terms of availability. But between the footprint that we're offsetting, the work that we're doing towards what they call SAF, the sustainable aviation fuel. And then lastly, we've invested significantly in the future, which is these aircraft called eVTOLs. And you may or may not have heard of them, but you've probably seen them on the TV or in print. They're the Jetson-like smaller, electric or alternative energy powered aircraft.
Cool.
Very cool. Very big race. We have an order for 200.
Wow.
Done with an Embraer spin out that, we're very much, and we're looking for further ways to do, those type of things. So this is very it's very much at the forefront for us and very important to us.
How does the offset, that 300% offset work? Like, what do you do? What does that mean?
So you want to work with a group that is certified and registered, right? Like it's a viable group. So we work with a group called 4Air. 4Air sells us the offset. The offset is then registered. There's a central registry. And then the offset actually goes towards various programs, reforestation, research into renewable and sustainable energies, et cetera, et cetera. So we invest in 4 projects. The one that's near and dear to my heart happens to be a reforestation effort that's near where I grew up. But it's essentially putting money back into the world to try to recreate, a sustainable world. And it's doing it at a much bigger, multi-million-dollar clip than others would do. And so you really, if you're thinking about this or working on this and you're in the hospitality space, first and foremost, you really have to figure out, Anthony, like, are you working with a reputable, registered provider, or is it kind of the wild, wild west? Because there's a lot of folks out there that are involved in this, and it's still a little bit of the wild, wild west. We do a lot of research to get here.
And do you work with companies like, say, hotels in Vegas to have these, like, to be part of the club, to have maybe their whales, their big spenders, to have jets at their disposal, or do they have their own? They have their own jets. Excuse me.
Both.
It is. It's a blend, right? So you're always going to have kind of 2 things that you look at: purpose of mission. So what size aircraft do I potentially want to be using? Yep. So, if somebody's going a relatively short distance, they may not want to use the large cabin aircraft that they have. We are the perfect alternative to that. Or the aircraft might be being used or down for maintenance or what have you. So if we're working with we work with a number of properties, right? Residence clubs and such. And it usually is that somebody just needs access to the jet to go to from for whatever reason. We're a great option for them. We're on file with them, and essentially it's one phone call or one digital transaction, and it happens.
Fantastic. I want to go back to the fuel thing for just 1 minute.
Sure thing.
I happened to have read an article just yesterday about creating airplane fuel from trash. Apparently, there's some sort of gasification process or something like that works. That seems pretty incredible. I create a lot of trash. Maybe I could fly somewhere one day on it. Is this real?
Well, I think that, when I look at SAF, and I'm no expert, but I would say that, the things that SAF is manufactured from, is created from, are very sustainable, long-term scalable ingredients, right? So it's if we could do it from trash, maybe perhaps that turns out to be like, the car that drives around that runs on grease that everybody happens to see, or whatever, the one person that can do that. I don't know, maybe.
Ed Begley Jr., maybe reach out to him.
Totally, exactly. Ed Begley Jr., right, was on the cusp, was a pioneer.
Yep, he sure was. And just for people who don't know who he was, he's an actor who turned environmentalist and really lives that lifestyle.
Totally does. Absolutely. Good for him.
Anthony?
He took the bus with his daughter to the Oscars.
Oh yeah. He was, right there with the electric vehicles when they, sort of came into mass production. he's definitely a champion for sustainability in the environment. Sure.
So, we've talked a lot about these kind of things, but we haven't talked about that on-board experience. A lot of folks are used to going to your major commercial flights and what that experience is like. What is your experience like, and are they different with the different jet types that you guys are utilizing?
And I'm glad you said that. And before you answer, I just want to have you read the book Unreasonable Hospitality?
I have not. Is it a great book?
Get the book. I'm reading it now. It's from Will Guidara, who's involved in 11 Madison and Nomad.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And when I'm reading it and when I'm seeing quotes, I'm like, oh my God, that's my life. It's like I've always been unreasonable about guest expectations, and the people surrounding me are also unreasonable. He's taken our brains and his brain and put it in a book, and it's phenomenal. And
Fantastic.
It's getting a lot of
and great lineage too. Great.
So definitely get it, and as soon as you get it, you're going to buy it for every person in your company.
All right, so Andrew, I want to hear your answer, but I want to let the audience know. I see you have a couple of questions out there. We'll get to that right after this, Andrew. So tell us about that on-air experience, and while you're at it, and we're going to talk about the types of planes you have. Just answer this one as well. What's the largest plane you offer? More personalized experience, and kind of go through it from that.
So first of all, you can access, from a light jet, which is typically a 4 to 5 person, type of experience, all the way to, a mid-size or super mid-size jet, all the way through to a large cabin. A large cabin is the one that you would typically see in movies and television. It is the one that's got, the most room on board. It can fit up to, 10 to 12 people, goes the longest distance, can go, transcontinental and everything like that. When you think about, onboard experience, well, the first thing I can tell you, you want to create the most friction-free journey that you can. So the same way that you think about in hospitality, that experience that is immersive and allows somebody to have kind of that flawless execution as they get to their room and they think about their stay and how much they have an affinity for a property because of that. We try to emulate that as much as we can. And we try to look at, first and foremost, you have to look at the segment of traveler. Not every traveler likes to travel the same. So for example, I'm not a huge high touch person just because my brain works on efficiency. So I do a lot of things digitally. I do a lot of things where I self check in or I go through a lot of different stuff. So we've catered to that mindset. And we found that we have things that we created, like utilizing text to book a jet, because we don't even want you to have to pull down an application out of the app.
That's pretty cool.
Just do it right through text and you're done, right? Because everybody got to adopt text, especially during the pandemic. So, that was one way we thought of reducing the friction, making it easy, and so on and so forth. And then getting to the onboard experience, right? So if you're in a light jet, you're really sitting in an aircraft that is got a small galley. It's got refreshments. It's not going to have any onboard attendant or anything like that because of the footprint, right? And you're really doing that to get to a relatively short, say sub 2.5-2 hour distance. Right. And then when you work your way up the metal experience, when you get to the large cabin, when you get to like a Gulfstream, like a G650 or a G5 or something like that, you're probably going to have a flight attendant. You're going to have a galley. You're going to have hot foods. You're going to have multiple stations for people to, sit. There's something called IFE, which is in-flight entertainment. And so that's going to have various things. That's where you think about your Wi-Fi, and we're really working on advances in Wi-Fi and that experience. It's not, the one thing I would say is, it's not like a hotel because it moves and it moves for sure. Trying to drive consistency on something that moves can be very hard, especially when you get into things like Wi-Fi and connectivity. But we focus on those details and we think about that and try to make sure that the person that has the experience they're having the private aviation experience and they're getting what they paid for.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, listen, I think Ed Bastian's got a guy on the internet for flights if you want to talk to him.
Yeah,
right. It's interesting you said that about texting. I don't know why everything I do in life that we can't do through texting, because all I do is text. And if I know it's easier for me if I can text you, I'm more likely to be a client, simply because I don't know what it is about me opening an email, but opening my emails stresses me out. If there's a text, I respond immediately, and I just love texting. So friction free is really what I talk about in excuse me, I can't get rid of my hiccup.
Let me tell you, Anthony, I agree with you. Texting is so much easier. In fact, that's the only way I allow my children to communicate with me now, because it's so much more.
You know what's so funny? You interrupted me simply to be able to tell that.
I interrupted you because you keep hiccuping and you can't get this sentence out. And I'm trying to save our audience from.
Yesterday for my new show, we were doing voiceover, and we had to stop the voiceover because I kept on hiccuping. Just when I get to the last sentence, I'd be like, I got it.
That's really hysterical. So we got a question from Alex Thompson over here. Now, Alex, we did address a little bit of this at the top of the show, like some of the benefits for the membership and how that works. So check the beginning of it out. But he is talking about duty of care measures, such as medical assistance and stuff. And I know there's other companies out there that provide that, and they will actually fly you back from anywhere in the world to do that. How does that work for you folks, if at all?
So it's interesting. So let me just for a second, and I'm not trying to plug the product. Let me just describe some attributes, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
At the end of the day,
but now he says that he's not, then he can, and it's legally acceptable. So.
There you go. So that's my disclaimer, right? There we go. So at the end of the day, you're getting a card that allows you to call a familiar team that's going to know who you are.
Right.
They're going to book an aircraft based on your mission, and they're going to guarantee that aircraft is where it says it's going to be. If for some reason there's a maintenance or what we call a mechanical on the aircraft, we replace the aircraft within a designated time period. And then at the end of the day, you fly. We make sure we're tracking you the whole time. We have service reports that run around the clock. Those are hospitality reports. I know exactly what's happening to any client at any given time. For what it's worth, we have 6,000 clients. I have 55 that I handle on my own.
Wow.
And the reason I do that is to stay in touch with specific, product attributes, clients, just the experience overall. So you're getting the guaranteed peace of mind. You're getting access to the jet. You're getting it in a relatively short time frame. And what you're also getting with it is you're getting access to book other things. So we have a helicopter division with our parent company that you can, on demand get a helicopter through the card, and it will just be debited off of your card. The other thing we have access to is air ambulances. So we've had several incidents over, each year. We always have several incidents where people need an air ambulance and need to be airlifted out. In fact, recently we helped someone in professional sports get airlifted out. And that can just be done on demand with the card within a reasonable time frame and debited off the card. So we think of these things. We also have a medical layer as well for basic things that, one would think about in travel. So the last thing I would tell you is we have a really unique platform, which we call our exclusive benefits guide, that comes with the card. And it allows for over 42 exclusive partnerships where you have access to things like exclusive resorts. You have all the things we're talking about on sustainability and such, but, luxury brands or high-end brands that are providing unique opportunities or complimentary stays or things like that come with your card, given the nature of the buyer. Of this card, it's very interesting to some of these other folks. So you get a series of unique offers that come along with the card as well.
That's awesome. You mentioned exclusive resorts. I'm trying to find. We did a show with exclusive resorts in June of 2022, but I can't seem to find out which date. But that was.
They're great, yeah. And James is great. Their CEO is great.
Yeah,
guy.
Exactly. That's who we talked to. Yeah. So Anthony, any other thoughts?
Basically, in one text, you can book a beautiful resort and beautiful aircraft and have great service. And like you said, friction-free is the new word for the next decade.
So Anthony, listen, that unreasonable demand that you talk about relative to servicing, I've always said it, and I'll say it again, which is, we'll meet the client wherever they want to communicate. So you have friction-free that exists for texting, but then we have people that just love to interface and talk to people and have to talk to people. We would take smoke signals for bookings if we could, right? It depends on what the client wants and how they want to drive it, right? We still have people that fax things in, and it's just their preferred way. But the last thing I would tell you is the reason we jumped to text was we do have a mobile app, and we're closing in on over $500 million worth of flight transactions on the mobile app.
Wow.
That kind of drove us to get to the text, because you go through those, incremental steps. There's just, as you know, there's just a different type of traveler, and there's a traveler segment, and you have to cater to their behavior as opposed to just thinking about them as a universal pool of clients.
And there's a cool factor of going, excuse me,
Totally.
Yeah,
That's great.
I just got my flight. You
Yeah.
know, when I order something from Amazon, sometimes somebody will say something, so I'll order it, and they said, "Give me a time clock," and it's like 6 seconds and it's ordered. And that's why you keep ordering it. If you have a friction-free environment, you keep using that product, whether it be an airline or a resort or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And it's critical.
Andrew, before we wrap up today, I'm curious, how many people on average are flying private out there? And I'll go back to those TSA checkpoint travel numbers. Yesterday, on the 25th of July, 2.349 million people went through TSA. How many people are flying private on top of all of that? Do you happen to know?
Probably have, hundreds of thousands of legs a month. If I think about our volume just at the Sentient level, you're probably flying somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 legs a day. There's probably an average of about 3 passengers per, right? So, then you multiply that across a span of 30 days and then a year. So, we tend to fly. I mean, the overarching industry has, a great deal of, it's actually a fairly fragmented industry, but you would find that most of the flying occurs in the US, the 48 contiguous. The next is the EU. And then there's a very small portion we call rest of world, like everybody else. But there's basically, it's not the millions that are crossing the TSA line, of course.
Right.
This is thousands, and in a given month, it's hundreds of thousands.
So is it continuing to grow? Sorry, Anthony, you go for it.
No, I was going to say, based on your calculations, is it 80,000 a month or 80,000 a year?
No, a month. Like it's definitely going to be, depending on the passenger count, et cetera. But like if you add up kind of business aviation in the world, right, between Europe and the contiguous United States, it's more of a figure like that as opposed to, in an annual year. But it is a small segment. You're talking about single digit millions of people that can do this versus a Procter & Gamble market, right? So, but it is growing. Yes, to your point, it's a great point about growing where, yes, we saw the burst that we did. And so the baseline's kind of wacky now because we just had this huge set of spikes.
Right.
But consistently, it was a single digit growth that started to get into double digit growth. But I would tell you, as things like, what we talked about, the sustainable aviation, the innovation in aircraft and the eVTOLs and things like that, you are going to see this expand out over time for sure. And I just feel like there was also a big discovery moment during the pandemic that helped kind of make people aware of the benefits of manipulating time or getting to far-flung places that they may not have done before. They may not have thought about it, and they may not have considered themselves a buyer that have now shifted in. So it is a growth market, and it's to be seen what kind of growth carries along from that. But we've had a wonderful year this year, and we continue to see an ability to not only service the client but grow the client base.
Where do you get your pilots?
I was just gonna say, and what's the future? Looking like for the pilot community?
Yeah, where do you get your pilots from? Military, civilians, other airlines?
So it's a good question. The operators that we use recruit. They can come from the military. They can come from airlines. As you've read and know, there's a significant talent war right now for pilots. Our parent company, FlexJet, is a fractional ownership and asset-based company with over 250 jets, a very large pilot group. That takes extensive recruiting, and it also takes extensive work on things like quality of life, compensation, and all the considerations. And if you follow along and you see, like United just passed a big, pay raise for their pilots, there's kind of that war happening at the commercial level. And so that does impact us. But I think we've got it in hand because we've invested over the years in, really good execution around recruiting. But you have to be very considerate of, somebody that is a pilot. And that's where the difference between, say, like making the Uber comparison to us and someone else, is very different, because that's a sophisticated, knowledgeable person that spent many years training, et cetera, et cetera. And it's one that, they should be rewarded. They should have the quality of life, and that, a happy pilot, happy life, right? Just to borrow another saying.
Yeah. So, Andrew, in the hotel business, we've been suffering from lack of people to work in the hotels. And
Sure.
like, for example, Anthony's new show, Hotel All Stars, is here to try to get people excited about it. How are you and some of your friendly competitors out there thinking about creating that next generation of pilots to alleviate some of the issues you all might be facing today?
It's not just pilots, right? It's I think about
mechanics, I
I
guess,
think about in the
everything.
hospitality space, 100%. In the
Yeah.
hospitality space, you can think about just what the experience is like, and you can tell whether someone's having that challenge hiring or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's about, the full, complement of people that are in our organization, because everything is a service touch,
Yes.
right? We are part of, as I said, a larger organization. So we've done some vertical integration, some acquisitions in order to do things like that. So right into maintenance and things like that. So we've invested heavily in bringing on that next breed. And in fact, it's funny that you say that. There is a whole conversation right now happening at our company around, that new gen of pilot that, 1 to 3 years in the company, younger, and how we bring them through. But I will tell you, the key is extensive training, quality of life, and making sure you've got a market competitive compensation package.
And what percentage right now do you have in female pilots, and how's diversity? How are you looking at diversity?
I will tell you right now, I'm not going to give you a quote on any form of KPI or anything like that. I can tell you that in our eyes, a pilot is a pilot is a pilot. So we make as much of an effort as we can to think about diversity and to think about equality and everything else. But for us right now, especially on the pilot side, if you are qualified and if we know that you can work with our client base and you fit our culture, you're in. And so, I fly with both male and females all the time, and I couldn't tell you what our ratio is at the moment, but I know that it's an extensive push on our side.
When was the last time you flew commercial?
2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
So I fly what I call the blend. Okay. Yep. And the reason I fly the blend, and this is just full transparency, like the comparisons to the hospitality industry and our industry are really, I borrow a lot from the hotel world. I've set up a revenue management system here on RevPAR and things like that, it emulates the same thing they do in the hospitality space. But I also fly the blend because I've got to run a P&L, right? The cost, the direct operating cost of a private aircraft is expensive regardless. Mm-hmm. So it's why our pricing is where it is. So if I can fly privately, wonderful. It's the best thing ever, right? And if I brought a team, I'm in Cleveland, Ohio right now. I live in Boston. I brought a team to Cleveland to our new command center here just this past week. I'm flying back later today, and it will be private. But I fly the blend. I believe in, the private jet. I believe in commercial. I'm a big supporter of commercial. I like a little Amtrak Acela in there too, coming in one hand. I'll do it all.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going Boston, New York, why wouldn't you, right?
Absolutely.
And can you jump on somebody else's plane? Like, can me and Glenn, if like we don't know each other, can we share or no sharing?
No, we don't do sharing. We call it private for a reason. There is a movement in the industry to have that, and it is interesting. And there's some firms that are doing that. We are keeping an eye on that concept, but for now, there's extensive, confidentiality, extensive security, all those things. So we stick to a purebred private aviation model right now. But I do think when you get into the conversations about, the eVTOLs or the sustainability, or you think about, the efficiencies, there's probably a model out there that works. I would just say this: if you think commercial is a really hard game, the moment you start sharing, right, you move from the metaphor and the operational expertise of private over to being a commercial, so you're at the whim of the consumer at that point, and it gets very difficult.
I'd imagine during COVID, between people not wanting, like you're not supposed to leave your home. So I would imagine if you're a business person or celebrity, whatever, and you have a house in whatever, say Hawaii, you probably want to get there without the press or anybody else knowing. One, you don't want them to know you're flying private, and two, you don't want them to know you even left your house to go to your house in Hawaii. I would imagine a lot of that was happening.
Yeah, two things. Definite yes. The second thing is that because you're utilizing a shared model the way we do, right, that open fleet mentality or that Uber-like quality, nobody's going to track you, right? Because it's not an owned asset. It's not a tail number that's in your registry. Or
I was about to say, what if you're Elon Musk's jet? Will you get tracked then?
Right, you would get tracked then, of course, right? Everybody knows that, right? But it's a great pull. But at the end, the reality of it is you're flying under the guise of Sentient, and no one's going to know that you're flying.
That's pretty cool.
And I would imagine, just like in the hotel business, I always say in the hotel business, you have to treat it like going to somebody's home. You don't go into the men's room and open up their medicine chest.
Right.
Do not tell secrets. And I'd imagine as a pilot or a flight attendant, they have to sign a contract that they cannot tell secrets.
100% discretion. You have to be the most confidential person possible. If somebody was a member of a crew and decided to go to page 6 in the Post and start blabbing about what they saw on one of our aircraft, that's just something that we wouldn't accept, and that person wouldn't be part of our culture anymore. But we have a great pilot group. We have a great, team. We go through a lot. We see a lot, just like hospitality. You see things that, people that are coming and going that are about to impact something happening in the world, and you get an advanced preview of it, and you've got to keep that to yourself, right?
There was an A-list celebrity, and he was having some issues with his wife, and she was having problems. And he said to me, came over to me, and he said, "Please make sure this doesn't go anywhere." And I looked at him and I go, full discretion. You don't have to say that. And
right.
it's if you're working in a high level in whether your business of aircraft or hospitality, it doesn't need to be said.
So I'm a huge Boston Celtics fan, and I knew who the new coach was many years ago, 4 days in advance, and I could not tell any of my drinking buddies who that coach was or anything else.
That must have killed you.
Before the press, it drove me nuts, but I promise you, I kept that secret. And that's, that's an everyday occurrence, right, Anthony? I mean, that's like, you see that, constantly, and you've got to be smart about it.
Yeah, what I train people is when you tell that secret, the only thing you're doing is making yourself feel better. So go deep into your life and know, why do you need to make yourself feel better about telling that secret?
100%.
And they look at me like, oh, I may need mental help.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, we're over the time that we promised, but I fully expected that to happen. I have one last question for you.
Sure, Glenn,
half serious, half jokey.
Yep.
But did Maverick get people more interested in being pilots and going down that lifestyle? Because I remember Top Gun, when it originally came out, really helped military recruiting. For example.
One thing I can tell you is I've never seen more paid time off happen when Maverick opened at my company than when it did.
Yeah.
So that was the first. I mean, the enthusiasm for, just in general air travel.
Yeah.
Especially in the last few years, there's a lot of things going on. The capital markets have really discovered private aviation. Maverick was one that was really kind of one of those hot spots that people really lit it up on. And now you have all this innovation happening on the future of flight.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would tell you that being a pilot, being involved in the ecosystem in some way, absolutely is spurred on by things like that. I was one of the most exciting things. I took my son right away. I mean, it was a big moment.
Yeah. So I know I've asked you this question before, Glenn, but I'll ask it again. Yeah. What branch of the military is Maverick in?
I know this one. You want me to answer it?
Yes.
Is he the Navy pilot?
Yeah, it's the Navy.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I know you would know it, but I want to see if Glenn was.
No, of course. He's landing on aircraft carriers.
Air Force recruiting gets more of a pop than Navy
recruiting. Than the Navy does. Sure. Right.
Well, most people don't realize. Yeah, well, you got to look at the giant boat they're landing on to get the Navy context.
You want to flip somebody out, meet an Army pilot. They're like, "What, an Army pilot?"
I thought nobody likes the Army. That's one thing the Marines, the Navy, and the Air Force could agree on.
Listen, without the Army, we don't have a free country.
Exactly.
Agreed, man. Agreed. And
even though I'm Air Force,
hey, heads up to all of them. A big congrats to all of them, because it's not something I ever would have seen myself doing. So they're.
You know what? I could see you the first day in basic training, Glenn, taking orders, and you'd be like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at you. I'm just not going to do that."
Yeah, I think maybe I'll just go sit down over there. It's a little hot out.
Right. And do you have a bagel?
Hey, listen, just a schmear. That's all I'm asking for on that. Andrew, you were amazing today. We really appreciate you being here. Could you just do us a favor? Give yourselves a good plug. How can people find you? All of that, in case anyone wants to start flying private with you guys.
Sure thing. Sentient Jet. We're a more thoughtful way to fly. You can find us online, Sentient. That's our handle on social media. That's our URL. I mean, it just type it in Google, you'll find us. And we've been around for a long time, so there's plenty of stuff out there that can talk about us. But we're always willing to help you, and we're always willing to receive your call or your text, or whatever way you want to communicate.
And if you wouldn't mind staying in the green room, because I want to talk to you. If you have
we're gonna wrap up, and we'll just give you an official goodbye in a minute. So
okay, great.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, let's get out of here right away. Hey, if you liked what we had to say today, why not listen to us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, all of those kinds of different services. We are there. He's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn. I guess we got to change the Twitter thing since it's now X, and I'm no longer on X.
Threads. We need threads, baby.
Oh yeah, we got to add the threads thing. All right, I'll get the team on that as well. All right, everybody, thanks so much for being here. We'll be back tomorrow with another live show. And remember, you got one life, so blaze on and
Be kind to yourself.
see you all tomorrow.
You being